What's going on? It's Dom. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to another DIY video. The day is finally here. I'm going to replace the brake rotors on my 2009 BMW 335i convertible. The boxes have been sitting here in the garage for months, and I can't tell you how many times I've walked by and I've wondered, when am I going to get to this job? Well, it's happening today. I chose the rotors from ECS Tuning. I selected StopTech brand and I went with cross-drilled and slotted pattern. I like the way they look. I think it's going to give the profile a really good appearance. And also, according to the manufacturer, the cross-drilled pattern on the rotor allows for those gases that are built up with that friction to dissipate quickly. And the slotted part of the rotor allow for the dust that's built up between the pad and the rotor to also dissipate quickly. That way you get a better bite and more stopping power. I'm also going to be replacing the brake pads. I chose Hawk HPS 5.0. I did some research, I looked at the forums, I watched some videos online. Everybody seems to be happy with it. They seem to have an overall good quality build, and I chose those to go with the StopTech. I think it makes a good combination. At this time, when I do the brake job, I'm not going to be doing a brake bleed, which is normally what you do. But since I'm not releasing the brake lines, I'm not going to go that far. Once I complete my installation, I'm going to take the vehicle out for a test drive. If I feel that I have a mushy pedal, then I might want to come back and do the brake bleed, or if I need to top off some brake fluid, I'll do that. For now, it's not on the agenda. Now, before we step outside and do this job, I want to welcome those of you that are here for the first time to please subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to click on the little bell so you'll be notified for all the future content that I post. Let's grab these tools, let's grab these rotors, and let's get outside and get this job done. All right, here we are on the driver's front side. We got to remove the caliper completely. We're going to let it hang with a bungee cord so we don't stretch the brake line. We're going to be removing the pad wear sensor as well, and then we'll be removing the entire rotor. So we've got a H6, a hex 6 on this one here to remove the rotor. Behind the caliper, we've got two H7s, hex 7s that we need to remove so we can remove the entire caliper and take out the brake pads as well. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the spring with tension right here, and hopefully with my trusty screwdriver, I can just pop it out just like that. As you can see, I painted these when I got the car the very first time, about 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago. I painted these. I might want to repaint them again, I'm not sure, or possibly upgrade them, something a lot better. All right, so once we got that spring off, I've got to get behind it and get my H7 hex in there to remove the 2 pins that hold the caliper. Little rubber cover that's on here on this boot, we need to pop that out with a screwdriver. That comes out very easily. Let's hope I can do this with one hand and pop this out. Kind of blindly and backwards I'm doing this, but you just get your screwdriver in there and just pull that cover right off. That protects the hex bolt that's in there, the pin that holds the caliper. There's also one up on the top right here. You pop that one off as well, and you take the 2 pins out. And with the pin loose, just pull it right out. This is the lower one. The upper one is the same way. It's a little tough for me to show you the angle. Hopefully you see it right in there. I'm just going to pull it right out. Now you can see that the upper pin is shorter than the lower pin. Keep that in mind when you're replacing it. And also they will be cleaned and they will be greased before we screw them back in. Okay, with the caliper pins removed, I can wiggle out the caliper off of the rotor. It does take a little finagling, a little wiggling. You can use a little pressure to pull it forward, so that way you're compressing the brake pad a little bit, and that just makes it easier to get over the rotor. And I'll show you why. For right now, I'm going to hang my caliper with a bungee cord. You don't want to put any pressure on that brake line, so it's a good idea to either have a caliper hook If you have a hanger, as they call them, and you can just let it hang there so it doesn't put any pressure on that brake line. Now, what gave me difficulty, I'm not sure if you can see it, there's a little lip that happens when the brake pad is wearing onto the rotor over time, over years. The width of the rotor starts to diminish and you'll get a little lip here and here, so that just makes it a little difficult to pull the caliper off. So you do have to compress the brake pads so that way the pistons inside can push outward and then you can slide it off a lot easier. And I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about when I remove the rotor. With the brake caliper removed and hanging, I'm going to remove the brake pads. I'm also going to show you what the brake pad wear sensor looks like and where it goes attached to the rear pad. Okay, this is the brake pad wear sensor, and it goes attached to the rear of the brake pad in this little U slot right here, this little groove, and it has a little slot on the side of it where you just push down, snaps right into place. And what happens is, while your brakes are rubbing against the rotor, the pad starts to wear down. Once that wears down enough, it'll eventually start to rub on the tip of the brake pad wear sensor. Once it does, that's when you'll get indicated inside. The brake light will come on and say, hey, it's time for service. It's time to check your brakes. Can you run it a little longer? Absolutely. But it's a good thing to check your brake pads and make sure, and then you can just replace it. And it's a very simple thing to do when you are replacing it, and I'll show you that a little later on. Now, to get the rest of the caliper assembly off, we've got to remove two 18mm bolts behind the rotor. And here's the bolt right here. It's an 18mm, as I said. We've got to remove that. And there's also one at the top. We need to remove that one as well so we can get the rest of the assembly off and then get to the rotor. Okay, now with the rest of the caliper assembly removed, that's where the two 18mm bolts go in from behind. I can loosen the H6 hex bolt here, and that will allow me to remove the rotor. Hopefully I don't need to bang it too much with a hammer because you do have to loosen it. It could be seized a little bit depending on when the last brake job was done with the rotor change and if they put any anti-seize grease behind there. But hopefully it'll come right out with not too much work. I can already feel it's a little loose, so that's a good sign. And there is your rotor pin right there, that little screw. Do not lose it. Keep it aside. It is kind of small. Put that to the side. You'll need it. And as I said, my rotor's already loose. I can pull it right off. I'm going to set it aside for the moment. We'll come back to it. But I just want to show you that there is a lot of corrosion going on here at the hub. I will clean that, scrape it down, maybe some sandpaper, keep it nice and smooth, and then put a little bit of anti-seize grease around the hub. It's not necessary to put it everywhere else, but definitely where the rotor makes contact with the hub. Okay, now let me show you what I was trying to explain out there in the sun. I brought the rotor inside. You can see this little lip there. So what happens is the inside portion of this right here of the rotor starts to wear with time when your brake pads are stopping the vehicle. So that's how it happens. Now, over the years, some people have them shaved down. They have them resurfaced. That's all fine. These are beyond that. I've had them measured. I don't have my caliper with me right now, but you can get a caliper to read the thickness of the rotor, and it should fall within a specific guideline for your vehicle. And if it's less than that, then it is time to replace them. I'm replacing them also for aesthetics. I want a different look. I'm tired of the way these look here. They look very old and rusted. I was going to have these painted here in black just to prolong the look for a little bit longer, but I do know that my rotors need to be changed because of that lip that's going on in there. It's gone beyond the wear limitations, so I'm going to change them out. So I prepped everything. I cleaned the caliper. I also cleaned the other part of the caliper. Used some brake cleaner on there and a wire brush. Cleaned that all off. Took as much of the dust that was on the shield here. And I put a little bit of anti-seize grease around the hub after cleaning it and doing the best that I could. Now I'm just going to pop in the rotor and go from there. Okay, I've got the rotor in place. I put my pin back in. It's not excessively tight simply because the wheel spins. So once I get the caliper in, I'll stick a screwdriver in there to kind of lock it in place, give me some leverage so I can tighten down that screw. I'm going to put on the caliper assembly from the rear with those 18mm bolts. Then I'll put on the new brake pads and put on the rest of the caliper and tighten it down. Okay, with the bottom half of the caliper in, I'm going to get ready to put in the brake pads into the top portion of the caliper. Now, we do want to add a little brake grease to the back here to prevent squeaking and give it lubrication while it's being pushed in and out by the piston inside the caliper. We also want to put a little grease right around these points here where it slides back and forth, where these contacts rub up against here and it slides back and forth when pressure is applied. Now, in order to compensate for the extra padding or more meat, as I would say, that the new pads have on it, it's thicker than the older one. Obviously, these aren't too bad, but the older one does have a little bit less padding on it. What you need to do is compress the piston here because then it won't fit over. It's going to give you some difficulty fitting over the width of the rotor, so you need to compress it. Now, they have tools that you can get which are easy, and you squeeze them and it compresses the piston. Special tools. I use a large C-clamp. It works just as well, just to push back the piston enough. And then I pull off the old one. This is the old pad. I'm going to remove that. Let me focus here, and that way I'll have enough clearance to go over the new rotor. Okay, now that I have the piston pushed back far enough, I can get the new brake pad on. But before I do that, I put a little bit of lubrication, brake lubrication here on these areas in the front, these two spots, just a little bit. You don't want to get any on the rotor, just a little bit. And on the back side, can't really get the camera in there to show you, but they look just like this. That is where the brake shoes slide. It makes contact and it slides back and forth. You just want to give it a little bit of lubrication on there to make it easier, and it prevents squeaking. Okay, with the caliper in place, I can put in the two pins. I will reconnect the brake pad wear sensor. Again, it's in good condition that I don't need to replace it. It's here hanging somewhere, and I'll show you. It has not been touched, so I can just reuse it and pop it back in. Although the brake pad kit did come with new ones, I don't need to replace them at this time. I can hang on to them. Unless I see any one of the other ones that have some wear and tear, and I'm going to replace those, I'll just come back and replace this one. But for right now, I'm not going to. It's a simple process to replace. Just follow the cable to these contact points here. You just pop it out of these grommet holdings here. Follow it all the way. It comes back in there. Here, and then you'll see this box right here. This box, if you open it up, I can get it open from underneath. That's one tab and two tabs. You pop it open like this, and under there is where it connects. You just pop it in. So you'll make the connection. You just follow it all the way back and snake it through and then connect it accordingly. But as I said, I'm not going to change it at this time, so I'm just going to snap that back close in there. The one in the rear is probably behind the shroud. You just have to loosen a screw or two to get in behind it, but this one is exposed right here. Okay, so with the pins tightened in place, I can put the rubber cap back on. That prevents any dust and debris to fall in there. I'll put the one up on the top, probably out of camera view. Kind of just feeling for it there. And, all right. And here's my brake pad wear sensor. Again, I'm not changing it. I'm just going to snake it through these plastic hold downs right here. And you can just follow the groove, how it goes into place right in there. And then you push it into the slot that is on the brake pad itself. Make sure it snaps right in, and it should sit. Hopefully you can see that. This is really close, a little blurry right there. That's how it sits, and that's it, and you're done. Now I'm gonna secure the rotor so I can tighten that set screw here. So here's what I've done. I just jammed in a screwdriver into those slots right in there just to prevent it from turning. So now I can tighten up that set screw there nice and snug. Okay, now that the pins are locked in from behind, I've got to put the spring that comes on the forward portion of the caliper. This is usually the hardest. A lot of people will say so. I know the pros have a very fast and quick method. My method always seems to take a little bit longer, so I'll probably do it off camera. So you don't see the struggle. All right, well, the struggle wasn't too bad. Just make sure that the top portion of the spring is inside that part in there, and this one here down there. And then while pushing in with one hand securely and holding it firmly, take a screwdriver, push it towards the rear and inward so it falls into that slot right in there, and you hear it snap into place, and that's it. You're locked in, you're good to go. The set screw is tight, I'm good. This rotor is done. I'm not going to show you how to do the other side. It's the exact same thing. The rear, basically the same thing, but as I said, when I go around to do the other ones, if I do need to swap out my brake pad sensor, the wear sensor, I'll add that into the video as well, how to replace it. But as I said, you just clip it in and then it snaps into that box right back in there. So this one is done. I'm happy with the way it looks. I'm finally glad that I got some new rotors. It's going to make the profile of the vehicle look a little bit better, get rid of those old rusty ones. So let me continue with the rest of them and get going. And the job is finally complete. All of the rotors are done correctly. That's right. The one that I put on this side first, which should have been over there, I swapped it out. Thankfully, I caught it in time before I started jumping onto the other side over there. And it looks really good. I like the appearance. I like the way the drill slotted aspect look on the wheels. I'm glad that they're done. Let me swing around to the other side. They look good. The car needs a little wash, but I like the way they look. Future work might be painting those calipers over again, or who knows, if the funds come into play and are in my favor, then I'll go out and get a nice big brake kit. But they look good. I gave the vehicle a test run. No issues. A nice solid pedal. I don't need to bleed them at this time. I think overall they look really, really good. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And as always, thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.